2003 Chevy 1500 HD with the 8 lug wheels. I'm gonna replace the calipers and the flex hoses. Okay. First we're gonna do is raise it up in the air, support it, remove your tires, spray some lube on your brake line here, spray some lube on your bolt there, and also spray some lube on your bolt there. And then you want to remove your tie rod end nuts on both sides. And then you break your taper with your 3-pound sledge. Hit the knuckle, break the taper loose. So that way you can turn the tire in without having to turn the whole steering suspension and everything. So, and then you can get access to the back bolts for the caliper bracket. So now we're going to break the taper loose with a hammer. You hit the knuckle right here at the hammer a couple times, and you'll hear the difference in the sound, and then you can just tap the tie rod out. Do not hit the threads because you possibly might want to reuse the threads, reuse the tie rod in, okay? So now we can turn it in and get access to the backside bolts, okay? Okay, I removed my flex brake line bolts off the control arms and off the knuckle. Most of the time they break off in here, so be careful that it doesn't break off. You want to put some penetrant on them and let them soak for a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'm going to break this taper. I'm going to loosen this line nut up. Okay, broke the line loose up here. It's a 9/16. Have your new brake line ready. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna unthread this, and we're gonna take off the clip, and we're gonna put our new line in there, put the clip on it, and then we're gonna put the nut back on it for the line. And then we'll put some little crimpers on the new line to keep the fluid from draining all the way out and consistently making a mess, okay? Yeah, I put my line up in there, and I got my line off, and I threaded it in. To get these clips off, you just stick a needle nose in there, wiggle them around. And then pry them out. They come out a lot easier than that. But that's all it is, just a little clip. Clips into the groove. There's a groove right here inside there that holds it in there. One side's bigger than the other. The bigger end, the opener end goes on the top. Okay. Just line it up. Make sure it's in there all the way. And get like a little hammer. And pound it in. On the line, let's see. On the line, it's got some notches that it goes into a special spot inside that bracket. Well, it goes in one way, so make sure you find out where it goes, turn it, and it pops right into that little bracket, and then you put that clip on. So I got my line in, I got the line tight. I put some vice grips on it loosely to help keep it from dripping all over my floor until I get it on my caliper. And now I can take this line off my caliper, and then I can take my caliper and bracket off. And the line, the banjo bolt is 11 millimeter most of the time. Okay, 11 millimeter, I got it off. And the banjo bolt stays with the line because the brass washer is, smashed onto it, so it doesn't allow it to come off. What you do is you grab hold of the copper washer, with a pair of pliers, and then you unthread it with your ratchet. You hold on to the washer, copper washer with the pliers, and you can unthread the bolt. Take the other washer off the banjo bolt and save the banjo bolt for after when we get the caliper back, new caliper on there, then we can put the line on the caliper. Caliper bolts are 21 millimeter. You take them off, and when you undo the last bolt, make sure you hold on to the caliper because it's very heavy. You don't want it falling onto your foot. Take it off as a complete unit because I'm going to get a complete unit back in the box as a core. And when I go together with my new one, I'm going to take them apart, separate them, the caliper from the bracket. That way I can put my bracket on with my hardware, and I'm going to put on some new pads. Okay. He has a fairly new rotor on here, so I'm going to take the rotor off and I'm going to inspect it behind it to see if it's any rust buildup behind it and clean it up. Yeah, there's a little bit of rust buildup behind there. I need to clean that up and also clean up the rotors also, because I don't want it uneven. I don't want them sitting on there uneven and then the rotor go like that going down the road. Because you know, when you take the caliper off, the rotor falls in like this, tilts in, and then you never know, the rust inside there might fall behind it and get wedged in there when you go back together. So I always take them apart and clean them up. Okay, I got it all cleaned up. I used one of these, one of those, a screwdriver goes inside here, nice brand new sharp one, and then a wire brush, the wire brush in there. Okay, that's all nice and shiny. I don't remove any model, I'm just scratching it. Now I'll put some anti-seize in there, and then I'll put my rotor on there. Where you're reusing your rotor, make sure the inside of it's clean like that. Okay, where that rides. But I'm gonna put new rotors on. And if you got new rotors, make sure you clean the rotors off with soap and water, degreaser, or windshield wash, or Windex, something like that. Don't use brake clean. Okay, because brake clean eats the new pads. Got a little bit of anti-seize in there. If they would have put anti-seize on there before, I wouldn't have to clean it up full of rust. Got my new rotor on there, nice and clean. I'll put a small pair of vice grips on the stud to help keep it sturdy so it doesn't move around when I'm putting on my bracket and my caliper and possibly fall off, hit me in the foot, because I'm not wearing steel toe shoes. Haha. All right. Separate your caliper and your bracket, the 18s, so you can put your hardware on here, and then you can mount this up onto the knuckle. Now the hardware is not the same because this end here is thinner than that one. This ain't gonna fit on that side. This one fits on this side. Okay. So don't try to press them on there and bend the foot out of them. Okay, now we got them on there. We can put this onto the vehicle, under the knuckle. Got the caliper bracket bolts on there. Tighten them up evenly. And then I torqued them to 110 foot-pounds. Double check your torque specs. Don't rely upon me. Now we can put our pads in there. And your clips, your anti-squeakers, they go towards the rotation. Rotation. So this goes towards the rotation. If this bracket was over here, then that one would go up like that. But this is gonna go on there like this. Put it at the bottom. Weasel them in there. Put the bottom in. And work our way in the top. Make sure that they go in there easily. If they go in there real tight, then you have to figure out what's tight. This tight or is that tight? Then you have to grind some down off the pad if they're too tight, because you want them to be able to move inside that bracket. You don't want them to be the piston pushing up against this one, and it doesn't want to return back against the piston when you release your brake pedal. So that happens and it creates a pull. You know, that's good. Now we're gonna get our caliper and get our caliper mounted. So you push the caliper on here, make sure the boots sit flat, top and bottom. And then when you put this in, your pin in, it goes actually into the boot. Okay, not into the boot, all right? I want to go through the boot, not into the boot, okay? Run them up, tighten in 45 foot-pounds, double check your torque spec. Also, make sure the bleeder's on the top. If the bleeder's down here, this would be on the wrong side. This would be the left one, okay? Okay, got my banjo bolt. Take your banjo bolt, put it in there. Make sure you got a washer on it underneath the bolt, and then push your bolt all the way through, and then put another washer on the other side. Okay. Once you got it on the other side, and you want to make sure it goes underneath your wires properly, and then line it up and start the threads on it. Once you line it up, start the threads, and then seat it and make sure it's inside that pocket there. It's like a step down. Make sure it's in there, and torque your banjo bolt 18 foot-pounds, and then you can put your bolt back in your upper bracket, and then you can put this other bracket up around the top like so. Okay, now I got my line on. I can undo my clamp, vice grips. Now the fluid's gonna be draining into my caliper, so then I can come over here and I can loosen my bleeder. I'll take my bleeder out and I'll put some anti-seize on my threads in my bleeder. As I'm tightening this up, I keep tapping this down so it sits in here flush. I finally got that one tight, and I got this one tight, okay? It looks tight because it's got a raised suspension on it. And always these things, they don't stay in. So what I'll do is I'll stick a screwdriver inside there, and I'll open them up. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. See? Don't stay in there for crud. I'm gonna get me a small zip tie to stick it in there. That'll help hold it open. I'll put my tie rod back in. I'll put some anti-seize on my threads and on my taper a little bit. I can take off my vice grips off my lug. Tighten that up. And just make it good and tight, and then put a new cotter pin in it. I'm still waiting for it to drip. If it doesn't drip right away, then you gotta lower it back down and you gotta take the cap off, so that way it helps the gravity push it out. Okay. Okay, I got my cotter pin in there. Okay, now it's not bleeding. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower it down, take the cap off, and it should start gravity bleeding. Once it starts dripping, I'm gonna close the bleeder, tap the caliper with a hammer, that'll vibrate it, then remove all the air bubbles. I'll open the bleeder back up, let the air bubbles come out, tighten it back up, lower it down on the ground, pump my brake pedal, so that way the pistons come out. And then I'll double check my fluid level. And I'll come back down here and I'll open the bleeder up and I'll bleed it again, see if any air bubbles come out. Let it drain for a little while, and then once you don't see no more bubbles, tighten it up. If you're doing both sides, do it the same way. Make sure there's no bubbles. And also put your wheels on and torque your wheels. These are 140 foot-pounds. Always double check your torque specs. And before you back it out of the garage, make sure you double check your fluid level. Put the reservoir cap back on. And then pump your brake pedal before you put it in drive or reverse. Okay.